In the introductory lesson, we looked briefly at the principle of operation of a four-stroke piston engine, considering one cylinder only. Actual engines, mostly motorcycle engines, have indeed been manufactured using one cylinder only. But by increasing the number of cylinders fitted to an engine designer can create more powerful units. Adding more cylinders to a design also has the added advantage of enabling the engine to run more smoothly. A typical design for a light aircraft engine incorporates just 4 cylinders. The cylinders can be configured as either inline or horizontally opposed, the latter being the type of engine most favoured in most modern light piston-engined aircraft. The inline engine can sometimes be fitted to run inverted. The V-cylinder arrangement was used for larger, more powerful engines of between 8 to 12 cylinders. These engines, of which the Rolls-Royce Merlin and Griffon were 2 examples, were used in the fighter and bomber aircraft of World War II. Engines of this type were liquid-cooled, and consequently much bulkier than their air-cooled predecessors, but the V-cylinder arrangement allowed them to be contained in a slimmer package, making it easier to streamline them into either the fuselage or engine nacelles in the wings, thus reducing drag. If, on the other hand, cylinders are arranged radially around the crankshaft in banks, then, although this makes for a larger frontal area, and as a consequence more drag, the engines thus produced are much shorter and lighter than inline engines for comparable power output. Engines which comprised 2 or 3 banks of 9 cylinders were used to power the large airliners of the 1950s and 1960s. There have been other developments in engine design. Napier and Son were at the forefront of those firms bringing out novel cylinder configurations. In 1917, they designed the 12-cylinder Lion engine shown here. The cylinders were positioned in a W formation. In the early 1920s, Napiers were once again in the forefront of innovative engine design. They pioneered the X-cylinder configuration with a Napier Cub, shown here together with the later Rolls-Royce X-cylinder engine, the Rolls-Royce Vulture. Subsequently, Napiers designed the 24-cylinder Sabre engine, which was used to power the Typhoon and Tempest aircraft during the Second World War. This engine had the cylinders arranged in an H configuration. After World War II, Napiers designed and developed the Deltic diesel engine, which is still used in railway locomotives, being capable of in excess of 1,750 brake horsepower. These engines had a triangular cylinder arrangement, as is shown in this picture. In the introductory lesson, we explained the basic principle of the four-stroke engine using the theoretical Otto cycle. When the piston is at the top of its stroke, the crankshaft is said to be at top dead center, or TDC. And when the piston is at the bottom of its stroke, the crankshaft is said to be at bottom dead center, or BDC. The stroke is defined as the distance that the piston moves in the cylinder when the crankshaft rotates between top dead center and bottom dead center. The piston is connected by a connecting rod to a crankshaft, and as the piston moves from the top of its stroke to the bottom of its stroke, the crankshaft rotates through 180 degrees. The complete cycle of 4 strokes takes 720 degrees of crankshaft rotation. The distance between the center line of the crankshaft journal and the center line of the crank pin is the crank throw. The stroke is equal to twice the crank throw. The internal diameter of the cylinder is called the bore. We'll use these terms, and others which we'll introduce later, to explain the Otto cycle. When discussing valve timing and ignition timing, we refer to their operation as occurring at specific points within the crankshaft's rotation, which are designated by the number of degrees that the crankshaft has rotated from top dead center. 180 degrees of rotation from top dead center will bring the crankshaft to bottom dead center. Another 180 degrees of rotation will bring the crankshaft back to top dead center. This animation illustrates the timing diagram of the theoretical Otto engine. Notice that all of these significant events happen either at crankshaft top dead center or bottom dead center. Initially, as the crankshaft starts to rotate and the piston moves down on the induction stroke, the inlet valve opens at top dead center and remains open for the whole of this period, closing as the piston reaches the bottom of its travel, crankshaft bottom dead center. The crankshaft has rotated through 180 degrees. With the inlet valve now closed, the piston moves upwards on the compression stroke, squeezing the mixture into a smaller and smaller volume and thus increasing its pressure. The crankshaft rotates through another 180 degrees during this operation, making one full revolution so far after 2 strokes. The piston is now stationary at the top of its travel, at crankshaft top dead center, before it starts to travel down on the power stroke. In theory, it's during this period that combustion occurs instantaneously, being triggered by the ignition spark, which also occurred at crankshaft top dead center. Because of the piston being stopped, the volume of space in which combustion occurs is not changing. That is, it's constant. For this reason, as we stated in the previous lesson, the engine is called a constant volume engine. Because of combustion, the temperature of the gases trapped in the combustion chamber rises dramatically, causing the pressure on top of the piston to rise also. This forces the piston down on the power stroke, driving the crankshaft through yet another 180 degrees. When the piston reaches the full extent of its downward travel, with the crankshaft at bottom dead center, the exhaust valve opens. With the exhaust valve now open, the piston is driven upwards by the rotation of the crankshaft from bottom dead center to top dead center. The exhaust gases are driven out of the cylinder through the exhaust port against the pressure of the atmosphere. When the crankshaft reaches top dead center, the exhaust valve closes. This completes the 4-stroke cycle. Remember, the 4 strokes are called induction, compression, power, and exhaust, and they always happen in this order. The crankshaft has completed 2 full revolutions during the period of the 4 strokes. The whole cycle now repeats continuously until it's terminated by switching off the engine. In practice, the theoretical cycle proved to be unworkable. So, to make it work efficiently, it's necessary to modify the times when the valves open and close, and when ignition occurs. In other words, to change the valve and ignition timing. The animation which follows uses a practical timing diagram like this to illustrate changes that have had to be incorporated into Otto's theoretical 4-stroke cycle, in order that it could work more efficiently. The timings shown are imaginary and are not to be associated with any particular type of engine. The first change to notice is that the inlet valve has been arranged to open 20 degrees before the crankshaft reaches top dead center. This will ensure that the valve is fully open early in the induction stroke. This means that there will be no delay between the piston moving down and the mixture flowing into the cylinder, as would normally occur because of the inertia of the mixture. The incoming mixture can therefore keep up with the descending piston more easily. The momentum of the mixture increases as the induction stroke proceeds, and towards the end of the stroke it is such that the gases will continue to flow into the cylinder even though the crankshaft has passed bottom dead center and has driven the piston upwards slightly. Closure of the inlet valve is therefore delayed until after bottom dead center, when the gas pressure inside the cylinder approximately equals the gas pressure in the induction manifold. As the piston continues to move upwards, the inlet valve closes and the gas is compressed. By squeezing the gas into a smaller space, the pressure that it will exert when it's burnt is proportionally increased. It should be noted that as the gas is compressed, it becomes heated adiabatically, in the same way that a bicycle pump warms up in action, as well as by conduction from its hot surroundings, and the pressure consequently rises to a higher value than that to be expected from the reduction in volume alone. Before the piston reaches the end of the compression stroke, in this particular case 34 degrees before the crankshaft reaches top dead center, the gas is ignited by a spark. The momentum of the moving parts carries the crankshaft up to and past top dead center, whilst the flame is spreading through the combustion chamber.